Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Kristina Harrill from Sweet for Kindergarten. Kristina is a former kindergarten teacher turned stay at home mom. She has three little ones at home, and her oldest is actually in kindergarten this year. So she has gone from being a kindergarten teacher to a kindergarten parent. In this episode, Kristina and I talk all about kindergarten readiness and how to best prepare your child for school. And we also talk about how to prepare you for school because being a kindergarten parent is so different from being a preschool parent. Kristina's shop, Sweet for Kindergarten, sells resources for kindergarten parents and teachers, and she focuses mostly on literacy. So she knows how to help you prepare your child for school when it comes to phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, and writing. Kristina has a passion for literacy and wants to make sure that all kids have access to these resources. Tune in to this episode and let us know your biggest takeaways by finding us online. You can find Kristina and I both on Instagram. I'm at Littles Love Learning Blog, and Kristina is at Kristina Harrill. She shares lots of great tips over there, a lot of motherhood tips. She shares what's working with her kids, what she's doing at home with them, and how to help you thrive during these years of having little ones at home. Hey, Kristina. Welcome to the Littles Love Learning Podcast.
Hey, Erin, I'm so happy I'm here.
So you, I remember, were one of the very first people that I connected with when I started my Instagram account, which was back in 2018, and you already had yours. And you've always been so kind to me and such a good mentor. And I would ask you questions on Instagram, and I just appreciate your positive energy in this space for teachers and also for parents of little ones.
Oh, thank you so much. That was so sweet.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you and your background and how you got into teaching in the first place?
So, my name is Kristina, and since I was little, I always wanted to be two things. I wanted to be a teacher and a mom. And so now I've been both. So, I just always felt this calling to work with children. All of my jobs were always with children. I was a lifeguard and taught swim lessons. I was a summer camp counselor, like babysitter. Pretty much, I knew I was meant to work with kids. So I went to college. I got my degree in elementary education and early childhood education. I got a job right out of college. I taught second grade for a year. And then the principal was like, I think you need to be in kindergarten next year. And I switched to kindergarten. It was the best decision ever because I absolutely loved it. I taught 6 years in kindergarten before having my oldest, who is now in kindergarten. So that was like almost 6 years ago. I stopped teaching. So right now I am a stay-at-home mom, but I also have my business, Sweet for Kindergarten, where I create teaching resources for teachers and parents that focus on literacy, phonics, and writing. So that's kind of what I do in my very little spare time. Especially now, I have three children, so I have very little time, but I love being able to connect with educators and parents and just kind of help them through this season.
Yes, and your resources are amazing. In fact, I have a picture to send you. I meant to send this to you ages ago of your directed drawing resource. We
Oh,
used it in kindergarten, and the picture is so sweet of the little ones drawing and their writing. It's such a great resource. So, if you're interested in directed drawing, Kristina has an awesome resource for that on her TPT store. But I love all of your resources and how you have always been talking about the importance of phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, early literacy. You always had that. So you definitely have great resources for parents and for teachers. But I would love to know when you started Sweet for Kindergarten. How did that journey start?
so when I was in, I think, my second year teaching kindergarten, I was always tasked with creating like little like worksheets and like our little like homework packets and everything. And I started messing around with like PowerPoint. And one of the other teachers was like, you need to sell this on Teachers Pay Teachers. Now, I had only bought free things from there. So this was like kind of a new thing for me. I was like, nobody's going to buy things from me. Um, but what ended up happening was I started putting my resources on and I just fell in love with like product creation. I was creating things for my classroom already. And so I was just taking those ideas and putting them on there. And then when I actually moved cross country back in 2015, and that this is when I started Sweet for Kindergarten. So I moved all the way across the country to California. I didn't know anybody there, so that entire summer, all I did was, like, create resources. I started my blog then. That's when I started my Instagram because it was a really great way for me to stay connected with other teachers on the internet versus, like, teachers that I knew at the school. So that's kind of how it all started.
That is awesome. I wish I had started all of this before I had kids. I think that's great that you had that time that you were able to devote to it. And now that you do have kids and you have a little bit less time, you are still putting out great resources and your emails are super helpful. So if you are a kindergarten parent or a kindergarten teacher, she has really great emails about all of the skills that kindergartners need to learn this year.
Oh, thank you. I love my email list.
Yeah. So now that you are a kindergarten parent, which is a totally different ballgame than being a kindergarten teacher, I would love to know what surprised you most, or maybe how you made the transition into being a kindergarten parent, because it's very different from being a preschool parent. That's for sure.
Yes, I feel like as a preschool parent, you are very, very involved with everything that's going on. You're getting, at least with my daughter's preschool, they were sending pictures every day. We had little like notes at the end of the day. And then I feel like kindergarten was a little different. There's no pictures getting sent home. There's just like one weekly email. And then really, if the teacher has an issue or something, that's really when they're contacting you. So that communication, I wasn't ready for it. And like I taught kindergarten, like I remember, trying to keep in contact with my parents and looking back, I was like, wow, I should have contacted my parents more. I should have been doing more. Um, I was always the type of teacher where I would try to send home, like, positive notes and everything like that, but it is hard finding that time in the day to send home, notes, and my daughter's the kind of rule follower, like, she doesn't get in trouble at school, so I know I really don't have to, like, worry about her as much, but I was like, "Oh, I kinda just wanna know, like, how she's doing, just on a more daily basis." So that was definitely, like, kind of a surprise for me. And then the one cool thing was she would come home with something and I was like, "Oh, I did that as a teacher. Oh, I did that." Like, it's just kind of fun
Yes.
seeing the different things come home, um, and just knowing that, like, oh, so many other teachers do very similar things, so to have that same experience. Um but also, teachers are gonna teach a little differently, and so at my daughter's school, they do sight words, like the weekly sight words and the rainbow
Mhm.
sight words, which way back when I did that as a teacher too, before I really, like, understood, how students learn and everything. So just, like, different things where I'm like, "Oh, I think I would go back and I would change things." Um, and then her teacher is doing it, so I'm trying to, like, teach a little extra, like, phonics on top of it and, like, show her, like, "Okay, look, the has the TH digraph in it," and just kinda teach those heart words, just so she has that, like, background, knowledge. So that was just something else that surprised me is, like, yes, teachers are going to teach all the different subject areas differently than what you did.
That is true. I know that can be a tricky spot to be in. I had that experience when my daughter was in first grade, and there were sight word lists that were being sent home to memorize, and I was just learning all about the science of reading. And so, does your daughter's teacher know what you do for your job with Seat for Kindergarten?
No, I don't think she does.
Okay.
Um, she knows that I was a kindergarten teacher. I told her that because I offered to help with, like, cutting out things. Because right now I can't. I wish I could go into the classroom to, like, help during centers, but I can't,
Mhm.
taking care of 2 other kids at home. So, I had told her that, but I didn't really tell her what I do because she's also a little bit older, so I don't think that, like, she's on Instagram or I don't really see much from, like, TPT coming home either. I'll see, like, I mean, very old worksheets and things from, like, 2000s, like,
Oh my goodness.
early. So, yeah, I don't think she knows.
That is so funny. Yeah, I definitely took a few years, I think, for my kids' school to know more about what I did. And now my son's kindergarten teacher and I are very good friends. And so she knows all about it. And I'm always encouraging her. to put her resources on TPT, just like you were saying, your co-teacher said that to you because she has some great ones. I have to show you her Heartword books that she created. You will love them. They're really great.
Nice.
So let's talk a little bit about preparing your daughter for kindergarten before she went off to school this year. What were some of the things that you prioritized? And then I'd also love to know, since you have a middle son who I know has a different personality than your oldest daughter, a lot of us find that when we have multiple kids, they do
Yes.
not have the same personality. Maybe kind of how you're planning on preparing him. Maybe it's going to be the same way or different ways, just kind of advice for parents on kindergarten readiness.
Of course. So, really, from the time that she was a baby, I really prioritized talking and vocabulary and speech and all of that because it does connect with phonics and reading, like all of that just kind of intertwine. So, I really like, I would be in the grocery store and I would just be talking about the shapes and the colors and, the different sounds when she's like a year old. And I feel like people kind of look at you like you're talking to this, 9-month-old, like, but I swear I think it really makes a huge difference when you just bring that awareness as young as like 6, 9 months. Like the earlier you start, the better. That's why they always say to like read to your child every night, read to your babies. Um, right now, it's a little bit harder for me to find that time to read to my kids. So I'm trying to like prioritize it. But that's the first thing. Definitely just reading and, going to the library and picking out books. I just went yesterday with my son and he got to pick out a couple books. I picked out a couple that, my daughter would be able to read and they were reading the books together yesterday. So just really like building that love for literacy, I think is the first step. Moving past that, I honestly did not do that much with her. And I was always like, my daughter's going to be reading at like 4 years old. She's going to be like flying through. And she wasn't, but it's okay.
Mhm.
She's a younger kindergartner, like she's not even 6 yet. And I didn't want to push her too much. I really didn't want to, sit down with her and try to read, but instead, I focused a lot on phonemic awareness, reading aloud, and then also letters and sounds. And so before she went into kindergarten, she was able to orally blend CVC words. She knew a couple words, she knew names, but by the end of the first month, I mean, she was actually reading CVC words. Now she's reading like crazy. So I definitely feel that because she had that strong foundation in phonemic awareness and phonics and literacy, that I think that she had no problem starting off kindergarten and she's reading very well now. So I'm happy that I didn't get too worried that, oh my gosh, she's not reading before kindergarten. Like I used to be a kindergarten teacher. What am I doing? What am I doing wrong? But just by keeping it really play-based and fun, I think that she had no problem in kindergarten.
That's
Mm.
awesome. To have that foundation, I think, is the most important part because then she has an anchor for whatever her
Mhm.
teacher is teaching her. She has somewhere to put it instead of just coming
Right.
in like a blank slate. You already did all of that pre work for her.
Right. Yeah, she had all that background knowledge. She had like the first little stepping stone, and then she just flew up the stairs once she
That's
like actually
great.
got into school.
Now, what about for your son? What are some things that you do for him?
Oh, so yes, he is the opposite of my daughter. He's very, very active. We call him like our little tornado because he just like that's I mean, you can just picture it in your head. So he's not the type of kid who will sit down and like I would be able to sit down with Caroline and do like a little letter, where she colored the letter and, you know, practice the sounds and everything. Like I can't do that with him. That is not how he's learning. He is not a sensory bin kind of kid. Like I did sensory bins all the time. He just throws it everywhere. He's also he turns 3 in a couple months. So he is very young still. But what I've been doing with him, in addition to, just the vocabulary and things like that, is I've started doing like I Spy. Like right now we're just doing colors, but we will eventually build up to letter sounds, which is a great little activity to do. I do that with my daughter a lot. but just doing more of the games style versus like sensory bin slash like cut and paste kind of thing because he is just so different. So as a parent, I've had to learn how to pivot and try new things because it's not quite the same.
That's so important, though, to recognize each child has their own unique strengths and their own gifts and their own challenges. And so you're making sure to adjust and pivot to help him. And of course, he has so many more years until he goes to kindergarten. But like we mentioned, these are the years that they're actually building those foundational skills. So it doesn't feel like they're ready for kindergarten or they're ready to read, which they're not, but you're still doing things to help prepare them so that down the road they're going to be able to take off.
Exactly. And the other thing I wanted to add was when we were looking at preschools for our kids, my two main things were play-based learning. I wanted a lot of play and hands-on activities. And then the other one was phonics. I wanted something where they were exposing the kids to that like print awareness, that letter sound connection. They also did the handwriting without tears program, which I love. So those were the things that I looked for when we were looking at sending them to preschool, and I feel that the preschool that we sent my daughter to, which my son will be going to in the fall, hits all those marks for me. So it was definitely a good place to send her.
Well, let's talk about that because I'm sure listeners have heard these terms, but they might not be comfortable with them. Will you just give us a brief overview of phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics so that listeners who do have preschoolers can kind of look for those in preschools and also any programs they're sending their kids to?
Okay, sure. So phonological awareness is more of a broader term. It covers like rhyming, syllables. So like the counting, cowboy has two syllables, which all of these skills are important for learning how to read, but they're not the most important. Phonemic awareness is where you really want to focus on. And those are the skills that your children are going to have to learn how to do orally before they can put it to paper, which would be phonics. So, for example, I talked about how my daughter was able to orally blend, and that's really just saying three or more sounds. So, k, at, and hearing that, and then being able to say cat. Kids have to have that basis before they can blend on paper. It just makes it so much easier. So with my daughter, I actually ended up creating like a pre-K phonemic awareness resource, and I did that with her daily for a couple months. And just doing that, she was able to orally blend. She was able to identify the beginning sound in word. So she was able to do those like very beginning phonemic awareness skills, where as they move through kindergarten, they're doing more advanced, like they're manipulating the sounds to change. It's just, I call it like word games because when you play with the words, you just become more comfortable and it builds fluency. It's just good all around. um and then phonics is putting that onto paper. So we want to connect those pieces. We don't want to just have them separate either, which is I think is very important. So when my daughter was trying to write words and she's trying to sound something out, we would practice the phonetic spelling of it. We would break apart the sound, say it really slowly, and then write it letter by letter. So that's just kind of the process that kids work through as they're learning how to read.
That's a great overview. And like you mentioned, we want to start orally, especially for our kids in preschool because they might not be really solid on their letter sounds yet. But that's not the first place that we need to start. We can
Right.
absolutely do these oral sound games first, even before they know their letters. And I think a lot of adults, when we as teachers talk about this, they think, of course, a child can say at is cat. Like, why wouldn't you say that? I will tell you, kids do not know how to do that when you first start.
No.
They will give you a random word like turtle, or they will just say at and leave off the beginning sound. And it's training. It's training their brain. It's training just like you would train any other skill. It's not that they can't do it, they just haven't been exposed to it. So when you can train them, like you said, you did with your daughter, I did that with my son when he was in preschool. When we had lunch together, we would always play those sound games.
Mhm.
It's just training. And once they get it, they get it. And then they're able to
Yes.
apply it to all of these different words and all of these different skills. So it just is being intentional about that time. And any child can get this. We can absolutely help them get it. It just takes that intentionality.
Right. And it is so easy to do on the go too. Like I would do it in the car, at the grocery store. I mean, you can literally do it anywhere. So it's not like you have to sit down and like plan a lesson and give your child a lesson. You're waiting for a doctor's appointment. You can do that in the waiting room. Like you can literally do it anywhere, which is the great part about phonemic awareness.
The greatest part, absolutely, and that most parents don't know about, and even I didn't understand when I was teaching, and I was teaching 1st and 2nd grade, and that was not something that we learned about in my teacher prep program, and it
Mm-mm.
was not something that was brought into the classroom, and now that I see it, I'm like, "How did we ever live without this?" Of course, this
Right?
makes the most sense for kids to focus on.
Exactly.
So, because you were a teacher and now you're a mom at home, is there anything that you do at home or maybe you don't do at home because of your professional experience?
So, at home now, um, I would say that the sight words, that whole thing,
Mhm.
I don't really worry about it. So one week she missed one of the sight words on her sheet, and so she had to wait another week to get retested. And it was a hard, I'm trying to think of what the word was. It was like want or something with a really like weird sound. And I was like, you know what? It's not a big deal. Who cares?
Mhm.
I was like,
Mhm.
"I know you can read. I know you can sound words out." Um, yeah, so she had actually sounded that word out, so the teacher didn't count it as being
Oh.
passed because she had to sound it out, and she didn't know it automatically, and I was like, "You know what? It's okay, Caroline, like, you know how to read, I know that you know how to read, you sounded it out, that's perfectly fine, you can sound it out." Kind of thing. Um, so just kind of knowing that in the back of my head, like, it's okay, kids learn at different speeds too.
Mhm.
Something that we do with her, she was struggling with writing for a little bit, and so I got out a couple pictures and just had her write sentences based on the different pictures. So just being able to have that knowledge, like, okay, she's struggling with this specific subject, how can I fix it? And doing it with her, I think that helps for sure, so
I think that's a great point too, because we were both teachers and now we have kids in kindergarten, but we know that our role as parents is to support that teacher and to work with our child at home
Mhm,
because we don't know necessarily everything that's happening in the classroom. And it's not that we don't trust our child's teacher, but our child is our child forever. And so if we see them struggling, we're absolutely going to step in. Where I feel like sometimes parents who don't have that background in education kind of feel like it's the teacher's role. I don't want to
mhm,
overstep my bounds. And I just want to share that message with all parents listening that, this is your child. And so if you do see a struggle, go to the teacher, talk to them. And if you know how to help them at home, like we do, we can help support you. Definitely work with them at home because it's not a case where you want to just trust the teacher. Everything's going to happen in the classroom, especially if there's a struggle. You can absolutely
right,
work with them at home.
exactly.
And sight words, oh my goodness, that's a whole other
I know.
podcast topic. I never understood, especially the sight word list. I did the same thing when I taught 1st grade that they had to memorize them, but
Yep.
they weren't in order of complexity. They weren't in order of phonics skills.
They
So,
weren't, like, based on phonics rules
no,
or anything, they were just random words.
they're
I know I did the
random.
same thing, I did the rainbow words and
Mhm,
everything, and, I mean, some kids can learn that way. I mean, my daughter, she picked up the words so quickly, and I know it's not all phonics based for her, I know that she just memorized some words, and some
mhm.
kids will do that, and that's okay, but they still need to have that phonics background too.
Sure, because once they get to those harder words and multisyllabic words, they need to understand
Mhm.
how to break them up. Yes, I'm
Yes.
glad that that is moving in a better direction for our
Ye
kids.
Me too.
There are way better ways that we can teach this and the skills so that then they can transfer to those harder words.
Yeah.
So, this has been so much fun to talk about kindergarten and kindergarten readiness. And I would love to know what is coming up for you in the future. Now you have 3 little ones, you're staying home with them. I know you try to work in the pockets of time. What do you kind of see for your future for Sweet for Kindergarten?
Ooh, I was actually just chatting today with some of my TPT friends about that. Um, yeah, so in this season of life, I've definitely realized that I have to take a step back. because obviously my family comes first and I am the primary caretaker, so I really need to focus on that. However, my son does start preschool in the fall, so I'm excited to get a little bit more time back to create because I does what I truly love. So right now I've been working on building out some more writing resources, so really focusing on that step-by-step modeled, directed kind of writing to help teachers be able to teach writing because I know as a teacher, I struggled teaching writing because nobody really teaches you like how to, sit down with a kid and actually teach them how to write. There's so many different steps. And so I've just been really focusing more on the writing piece because I do have a ton of phonics resources and everything like that. So I want to focus more on writing and then kind of connecting them together. So that's kind of what I'm working on in the future. Who knows what it's going to look like in a year. I am hoping hopefully in the next year or two to create a writing curriculum that's just super easy for teachers to use, have like daily lesson plans and those daily writing directed drawing journals, that was supposed to be the like daily warm up for the writing curriculum. I just haven't gotten the chance to finish creating all of it. It's so hard because I have so many ideas in my head. I just don't have the time. Um but yeah, it's been great having a kindergartner because I've been testing out everything with her. I created a new writing resource and I'm like, "Here you go. Let's do this together."
That's the
So it's been
best.
great. I've been getting a lot of new ideas and more ideas just because she's at that age right now. So,
That's very exciting. Absolutely. Writing is so important. And that's something for parents listening to understand as well, that when we're teaching our kids reading, we can't forget about writing, that reading and writing go hand in hand.
mhm.
Like you mentioned, it's so much more than just writing. I mean, it's handwriting, it's knowing letters and sounds, it's being able to do conventions like spacing and
Finger
capitals and
spaces,
peering.
like
Yes.
you
Yes.
have to literally go to, like you have to go so, so slow
Yes.
to model how to write, and I just remember one of my first writing lessons, I, like, flew through it, and my kids are just like, "What what just happened?" And it wasn't until I really took a step back and, like, slowed everything down and, like, really broke things up that I was able to teach writing in a more effective way, but I'll never forget their faces, like
Oh, I can only imagine. We just did writing yesterday in kindergarten when I was volunteering, and it is such a multi-step process even to
Mhm.
get their ideas out, and they reread the sentence to themselves, and they're missing words, and it's out of order, and even just that piece of it, getting those sentences down in the right order, very tricky. So
Yep.
I look forward to that for sure.
Yes, hopefully by, like, 2025, we'll have it at least started. That's my goal.
I know. I remember that when my kids were little and I didn't have as much time to work, wanting that time to work. It's such a balance between wanting to work, but also wanting to enjoy them when they're little. So you have all these
Right.
ideas in your head, but you also know this time flies by. So it's definitely a balance, I think,
Yeah.
when we are entrepreneurs and we have all these ideas to balance motherhood and working.
Yeah.
I definitely relate to that. So, what do you hope the biggest takeaway is from this episode?
I hope that any parents listening kind of just take a breath and just know that everything's going to be okay. Your child will learn how to read, but I hope that I we gave you a couple good starting points of just easy things that you can do on the go with your kids.
Yes, let's make it easy. Let's make it fun and play based. And if there is a concern and you're thinking something is not right, absolutely go to your child's teacher. You can definitely investigate more, but I'm sure that you're doing a great job. I think parents need to hear that more often.
Yes,
We are all doing a
definitely.
great job. Well, my last question for you, since this is the Littles Love Learning podcast, I would love to know what you love most about working with littles.
Ooh, so I just absolutely love the crazy things they say. Um, just I can't even think of an example, but just the little things that they say, they're just so funny. I love 5-year-olds and like my daughter is 5 right now, and it's so much fun. Like I keep saying, I don't want her to grow any older because she's so sweet, but then she's so funny and she's got a little sarcasm with her too, a little sass. It's just the
Oh,
best
yes.
age, the best personality.
We used to say to parents in parent teacher conferences that anything that happens at home, we probably know about
Yep.
in the classroom because they tell us everything in the funniest ways.
Yes. Oh, the stories I heard.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time, Christina. I know you are so busy. Your little one's napping right now, and I so appreciate your time. Can you tell everyone where they can connect with you online?
Yes. So if you search Sweet for Kindergarten, that would be my blog, my TPT store. I also have a kindergarten Facebook group that's for parents and teachers. It's called Kindergarten Tips and Tricks. So I'll have her link it for you in the show notes. But that's really helpful because parents and teachers will ask questions and the other will answer. So it's definitely a great group. But yeah, I'm pretty much Sweet for Kindergarten everywhere. I also have more of a motherhood Instagram. It's just my name at Kristina Harrill, where I just kind of talk about daily life and, what I'm doing with my kids, different toddler activities. I share some literacy stuff on there as well. So,
I will make sure to link to all of that. I did not know you had a Facebook group. I'm going to have to join
yes.
that and get
Yes,
those
you do.
kindergarten tips and tricks. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much again for your time, Christina.
Thank you for having me.